Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Wilson Center. My name is Will Pomeranz, and I'm the director of the Kennan Institute. And today we have the honor and the privilege of hearing from the mayor of Bucha, Anatolii Fedoruk. His story and the story of the destruction of his town at the hands of the Russian military shocked the world in the spring of 2022. What happened in Bucha and the war itself is a needless tragedy. And the author of that tragedy, President Vladimir Putin, launched this unprovoked war in a large part because of his distorted view of history and society. It is a stark reminder to us all of the danger of following the path of bad history towards even worse policy. It also reminds me that it is the mission of the Wilson Center and the Kennan Institute to fight against that kind of outcome here at home. We convene the policymaker and the academic together precisely to fight against bad ideas and bad history leading towards tragic policy. The Kennan Institute has worked in Ukraine for over 30 years, and we are very proud of our over 100 Ukrainian alumni. Many think tanks talk about Ukraine during this time, but the Kennan Institute has really the most depth and the most information about what's going on in Ukraine. We have conducted conferences on Chernobyl and the Holodomor. We have conducted contemporary Ukrainian literature series and run in partnership with Columbia University, and we have conducted programs on exhibits of Ukrainian art. You cannot understand Ukraine without taking all of this and much more into account. It is now my pleasure to introduce someone who understands more than most in Washington just how important Ukraine's emergence as a sovereign democratic country has been for the world. Ambassador Mark Green is the president and CEO of the Wilson Center, and I don't know anyone who has had such a diverse and distinguished career in public service than Ambassador Green, being a congressman, an ambassador, an administrator to USAID, head of the McCain Institute, and so much more. He was an election observer in Ukraine in 2014 following the Revolution of Dignity, and here at the Wilson Center he was instrumental in helping the center meet the moment after Russia's invasion. Most importantly, he directed the expansion of our center's coverage of the war through the establishment of our Hindsight Upfront Ukraine webpage, which includes contributions from all programs of the Wilson Center, covering not just the war, but its global consequences. Ambassador Green will come to the podium after a brief video on Bucha, and I now direct everyone to the screen.
Welcome everyone to the Wilson Center. And as we get going, I'd like to begin with a very special word of thanks and welcome to my friend John Sullivan, who served courageously as our ambassador in Moscow. And he was there, of course, during the early dark days of the Russian invasion. As some of you know, and as we just heard from Will, I had the opportunity of serving as an election observer in Kyiv not so many years ago, 2014. And I remember that project so well. First off, I was traveling at the time with Madeleine Albright to witness the election. But I remember so well visiting the Euromaidan. I remember walking along the avenue of the Heavenly 100. And I remember visiting the barricades and bunkers where Ukrainians, young and old, had gathered to protect their democracy from Putin's directed thugs. And I saw the makeshift memorials to those who lost their lives in that effort. But in witnessing those historic elections of 2014, I also saw the character of the Ukrainian people. They turned out then to show their leaders, to show the Kremlin, to show the world how much they wanted democracy and the freedom to shape their own future. Tragically, the very right of Ukraine to exist is under brutal assault once again. And once again, Ukrainians are fighting back courageously and valiantly. And that's why today's event matters so much. Today we will hear from the mayor of Bucha. Russian forces began their assault in the town of Bucha on February 27th, 2022, as part of their campaign to encircle Kyiv. By March 31st, Russians were in retreat from Bucha, leaving behind mass graves and unimaginable devastation. During the Russian occupation, the mayor went into hiding to coordinate assistance to those few thousand people who were remaining behind. His interviews with international media over the spring and summer of 2022 really helped awaken the world to Russian war crimes and just what was happening. Bucha represents the world's first definitive look at how the Russian military employs atrocity in Ukraine as a deliberate tactic. According to one official account, 458 bodies were recovered from the town's ruins, with 419 bearing signs of torture and other mass trauma. The crimes committed in Bucha and subsequent reports and video from other sites of Russian atrocities have galvanized international opposition to Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine. And in my view, the mounting evidence of Russian war crimes is a major contributor to the accelerated and expanded assistance provided Ukraine as it fights for survival as a state and as a culture. And it is one of the ironies of this war that the very brutality that Putin tried to use to scare people, to beat them into submission, actually had the reverse impact of awakening the world, of bringing the world together, and confirming and reaffirming for the world how important it is, not just Ukrainians, but that the rest of the world stands up to this brutality and this aggression. The task now before the mayor and his team, including the deputy mayor, who will be joining us during the panel discussion, is now one of reconstruction and bringing Bucha's residents back home. Their work is not only about restoring buildings and infrastructure, but also documenting Russian war crimes and atrocities, and helping the town to come back together as a community while the wider war continues. I'm grateful to my friend and former colleague, Brock Bierman, for co-sponsoring today's session. Brock is, to use a technical term, an impressive guy. He's an entrepreneur and a public servant. His bio is far too long for me to relate here, but I will note that he leads Friends of Ukraine, today's principal co-sponsor. Last year, Brock led 7 missions to Ukraine to deliver humanitarian assistance. As founder of the Volunteer Ambulance Corps, he helped raise $2 million through a partnership with Rotary International to purchase 90 ambulances for Ukraine, personally driving several to the front himself. For his humanitarian contributions, Ukraine's Territorial Defense Force made him an honorary soldier. I believe Brock chose the Wilson Center for today's event because of our unique congressional charter and mission, in Congress's words, to strengthen the fruitful relation between the world of learning and the world of public affairs. That charter makes us fiercely nonpartisan and independent. We are not advocates for Ukraine or any other nation other than our own. But nor are we, strictly speaking, an academic institution. We are not removed from the events of today. Our goal is to enlighten with information and analysis, and today we will hear firsthand accounts about what's actually transpiring on the ground. That message, delivered here at the Wilson Center, is intended to inform our audience in the room, our audience online, and those who will access today's video in the future. My hope and expectation is that you will come away better informed about the unfolding events in Ukraine and what the people of Ukraine are doing in response. America needs informed policymakers and an informed public on the issue of this war, a war that has been called an era-defining conflict. It is one of the most important and urgent tasks confronting our nation in these turbulent times, and it's a serious matter that demands serious examination of the facts without prejudgment or partisanship. I close today by introducing our main speaker. Mayor Fedoruk was first elected mayor of Bucha in 1998. In addition to his leadership during the occupation, which I've already described, he led in a number of important civic improvements to Bucha, including schools and community centers, healthcare centers, waterworks, and a municipal park. He was first trained as a historian, then earned a degree in management, which means he fits right in here at the Wilson Center and our scholarship charter. It is my very great honor at this time to welcome Mayor Fedoruk to the podium. Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Доброго дня, шановні пані та панове.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Перед тим, як перейти до розповіді, до своєї промови, я щойно ще, сидячи в залі, дивлячись вам в вічі, вкотре задав собі запитання, а чи все ми зробили і чи все зробив цивілізований світ для того, аби трагедії в Бучі не сталося?
Before starting my speech, while I was sitting, I was thinking if all of us, if the whole civilized world has done everything possible in order to avoid the tragedy in Bucha.
І це запитання не докір, це запитання для того, щоб ми знайшли відповідь і в майбутньому фактично знайшли ті механізми, які будуть гарантувати безпекові питання, знайти ті механізми, які будуть впливати на політиків, на авторів цієї війни, як щойно було зазначено, а це пан Путін і військово-політичне керівництво Росії. Це ті відповіді, які ми дамо самі собі, як цивілізовані люди, аби за ті злочини, ті, хто їх робили, понесли покарання.
And this is the question for us to basically, for all of us to find the answer, in order to find those mechanisms of security, in order to find the mechanism to influence those authors of this war, in order to find those answers for ourselves as a civilized world, and not to allow Mr. Putin and the company to do this again.
Чому я на цьому так загострюю увагу і розпочинаю свою промову? Тому що війна в Україні, в моїй країні, на превеликий жаль, триває вже більше 7 років. І лише на 7-й рік після повномасштабного вторгнення, коли весь світ побачив, що собою являє російська армія, військово-політичне керівництво Росії, які злочини чиняться в центрі Європи, тоді світ жахнувся і нарешті почав об'єднуватися, нарешті почав розуміти, що це не війна десь далеко в Україні між Україною і Росією, а це війна цивілізацій.
And I would like to emphasize, while the war is happening in my homeland in Ukraine, the war is going on since 7 years. And what is the army doing since the 7 years of war? We have seen just now all of those crimes and autocracies that happened in Bucha, and they were all open to the world. And this is the time for us to unite and to prevent so that it does not happen again. And we all have to remember that the war is not happening only between Russia and Ukraine. The war is happening between the civilizations.
Вкотре акцентую увагу на тому, що це не докір. Навпаки, ми вдячні американському народу, партнерам за ту підтримку, яку маємо сьогодні. Але це і ми в Україні в 21 сторіччі важко сприймали, що може в цивілізованому світі відбуватися розв'язання певних питань або навіть амбіцій в такий спосіб, тобто військову агресію, вбивство людей робити, цивільних людей.
And again, this is not a blame for anybody. This is for us to make conclusions. And nobody could have thought that such autocracies, such crimes may have happened in the middle of Europe in these times.
А те, що бучанська різанина – це злочин, і таких, на превеликий жаль, місць, містечок на території України, куди дійшов російський окупант, є велика кількість, це лише вкотре говорить, що ми цих рашистів маємо засудити.
Bucha massacre is definitely a crime, and of such cities and towns in Ukraine we have quite a lot, and this is just emphasizes us that we have to do everything possible to punish such crimes.
Передмістя столиці, 20 кілометрів від Києва, розташоване моє прекрасне мальовниче місто Буча.
My beautiful and blossoming city of Bucha is located 20 kilometers away from Kyiv.
Де до війни ми до повномасштабного вторгнення намагалися розвиватися, виходячи із наших економічних можливостей, які є в Україні, будували школи, садочки, створювали сім'ї, народжували дітей і уявити собі не могли, що 24 лютого вранці будемо знаходитися під ракетними, авіаційними і гелікоптерними обстрілами. Відбувалася висадка десанту.
Before the invasion, our city was developing with accordance to the economical possibilities of our country. We were building schools, kindergartens, we were raising children. But on 24th of February, we couldn't have thought that we would wake up with missiles attacks, with artillery and the descents that were landing over us.
Не знаю, на яку успішність спецоперації розраховувало військово-політичне керівництво Росії агресора, Росії терориста, але практично кожен населений пункт Київщини в передмісті столиці став фактично крепостю, форпостом оборони мужності, стійкості для того, аби не пропустити цю навалу до столиці.
I'm not sure what was the aim for this kind of a special operation performed by Russia as a country and Russia as a terrorist country. However, the suburbs of Kyiv have become a forpost or a defense for the capital and suffered the most.
І якщо не було зазначено, 27 лютого їхню браваду, таку, їхнє бажання йти на парад до Києва, Збройні сили України зламали, зупинили і розбили вщент.
And as it was already mentioned, on 24th of February, their wish to parade in Kyiv was destroyed by the armed forces of Ukraine.
Скоріше за все, розуміння того і усвідомлення тих бригад, батальйонів, які були на території Київщини, що їм Києва не бачити, то вони взялися і приступили до звичної для себе справи – вбивати, грабувати, гвалтувати.
Most likely, the understanding for those brigades and troops that were standing there, the understanding that they will not be able to capture Kyiv, has led them to do what they are used to do very well, to do their crimes, to kill, to rape, and to loot.
Те, що ці підрозділи, військові підрозділи, різні структурні військові підрозділи виконували військово-політичний наказ вбивати цивільних громадян, залякувати в такий спосіб весь український народ, саме в місті Буча, в мене викликає сумніву, тому що російські окупаційні війська, проводячи зачистки, працювали по зарані підготовленим спискам на політиків, на лідерів громадських думок, на лідерів партій, взагалі активних людей.
And the fact that those troops that were standing in our city were making an order to kill and to make people afraid, I have no doubts in that. I'm quite sure that this was the order from the military and political governments of the country. I'm also assured about that because they did have lists of all of the active people in our community, in all of the authorities, and while they were purging the area, they were searching for them.
І, напевно, ви задасте логічне для цивілізованої людини запитання, а чому вони так робили по відношенню до цивільного, мирного населення, яке точно ніякої загрози їм не чинило, не спонукало до того, щоб вони були вбиті.
And as a civilized person, you may have asked quite a logical question. Why would they do this against those civil people that have done nothing and they have nothing to do with the military?
І відповідь тут очевидна. Вона на поверхні. За попередні злочини, які робила російська армія в різних куточках світу, аналогічні злочини не були належним чином досліджені і доведені до військового трибуналу.
And the answer is quite obvious in this case, that for all of the crimes that have been done by Russia before, they have never been punished and they have never been brought to the war tribunal.
Вони навіть між собою спілкуючись, висловлювалися: «Війна все спішить, вбивай, грабуй, гвалтуй».
Even between themselves, they were talking and saying the Russian phrase, the war will write it all off. So kill, rape and loot.
Навіть в питанні війна – це завжди жахіття, завжди руйнація, але вона навіть має певні правила, визначені міжнародними стандартами, але росіяни і їх порушили, коли мова йде про зелені коридори, коли тисячі людей з міст і селищ намагалися добратися до безпечних міст. Росіяни обстрілювали машини Міжнародного Червоного Хреста, машини надзвичайних місій, які по виразу видно було, що це точно не військові автомобілі, це шкільні автобуси, це карети швидкої допомоги. Тобто навмисна дія, навмисне вбивство.
The war, it's always terrible and it always brings a lot of pain, but all in all, there are still some rules that must exist. But for the Russians, there were no basically the rules. They have been shelling also the green corridors through which thousands of people were trying to escape and evacuate themselves. And they have been shelling on international missions cars, on Red Cross cars. And those were not just cars, they were the school buses that were trying to evacuate the people, so they have really literally no rules.
Але нам вдалося, попри те, що ми офіційного дозволу на проїзд гуманітарних місій громадян, виїзд не отримували з їхнього боку підтвердження, але нам вдалося майже 50 тисяч громадян переправити до безпечних місць. І під час окупації в місті залишалося трошки більше 3 тисяч громадян.
But even though we have not managed to obtain an official permit from the Russian side to evacuate the people, we have managed to do so for around about 50,000 of the citizens of our city, and around about 3,000 still remained in the city while it was occupied.
В цілому 419 громадян мого міста за цей період було вбито, навмисно вбито російськими окупаційними військами. Це чоловіки, жінки і, на превеликий жаль, діти.
419 people were killed, civilians were killed during the occupation, intentionally killed by the Russian occupational troops. These were men, women, and very unfortunately children.
І тут надзвичайно важливо не мати перекосів в прийнятті, в ухваленні рішень подальших, навіть сьогодні або після великої нашої спільної перемоги. Відбудувати ми відбудуємо, дійсно, це важливо, але не можемо пробачити навмисне вбивство людей. Військовий трибунал, військово-політичне керівництво, виконавці мають бути покарані. Точно так само, як нацизм після Другої світової війни був засуджений, точно так само рашизм має бути притягнутий до відповідальності. Лише тоді ми на десятки років будемо мати мир і спокій на планеті Земля.
It's important to have the balance in all of this. Either it is now or after the victory. We will rebuild. We will do everything. But we will not forgive for what happened. And those who are guilty for everything what has been done, they must be punished. All those who have given orders and all those who have actually done those crimes must be punished and must be brought to the war tribunal. As the Nazism was punished and judged, the same must be done with the Russism, and so that we can, for the next 10 years, live in peace.
Звісно, ми звертаємося за підтримкою до міжнародних інституцій в цьому питанні, точно так само, як ми звертаємося за підтримкою допомогти нам відбудувати те, що зруйнувала російська армія, те, що зруйнував фактично Путін, тому що саме він давав наказ вчиняти ті дії, які сьогодні. Вчора, сьогодні обстріли йдуть міст: Херсон, Харків, Львів, Вінниця. Практично не військові підрозділи, житлові будинки, школи, садочки, нищиться вся критична інфраструктура, він робить з України пустку. Але на цій пустці 45 мільйонів українців живуть, борються. Ми обов'язково вистоїмо, переможемо, але нам потрібна ваша підтримка.
And that's why we are asking for help from international institutions as well, as well as for tribunal, the same for rebuilding, because all of this has been destroyed by Putin. Even yesterday and today, the Kherson, Kharkiv, Lviv, Vinnytsia, all of these cities are being struck every day. But 45 million of Ukrainians are still living and defending and fighting, but we do need your help in this.
Останніми подіями в Україні, я маю на увазі Революція Гідності, вибори, вигнання президента Януковича як зрадника, фактично позиції і думки народу, українці довели свою чітку позицію і послідовність до європейської спільноти, до спільноти країн демократії. В країнах демократії дехто думає, що свобода, цінність життя людини, безпекові питання – це спадкові речі, що вони від покоління до покоління вже передаються через нотаріальну дію. Це далеко не так. Сьогодні в Україні фактично відбувається боротьба цивілізацій, чорне і біле, автократія, демократія. Ми, демократичний світ, обов'язково переможемо в цій війні і в цьому виклику. Дякую.
and the last actions that were or events that were happening in our countries. I mean, the revolution that was with us, the president Yanukovych who was expelled from the country. We have proven, the Ukrainians, we have proven that we are choosing Europe, and we would like to be a part of this. And many people are considering the values of democracy, of the freedom, as something that has been inherited and is taken for granted. But in fact, we are all fighting for this there, and this is not something that has been given to us just like that. And this is now the war of civilizations between the white and black, between the autocracy and democracy. And we are all fighting for our democracy, and we ask you for help. Thank you very much.
Дякую вам.
Please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just want to take a quick opportunity to thank my former boss, Ambassador Green, for opening up this opportunity for us to talk today, having you hear directly from the mayor and the deputy mayor about the atrocities in Bucha. But before I begin, I just want to say a few remarks because I know we're limited for time and hopefully we can get to a couple questions. But the bottom line is that Bucha has been more than a recipient, they've been a partner. From the first time that we talked to the mayor, we immediately found out that he's very strategic. He is very focused, and he's starting to rebuild the country the day after the Russians left. I mean, when we arrived, they had already started rebuilding the schools and the roads and cleaning up. So they weren't waiting for the donor community. They also have contributed with us in terms of not just in a partnership way, but in a financial way. Rotary International, Ukraine Friends, has worked together cooperatively with the city of Bucha to rebuild schools and to provide clothing and to provide humanitarian assistance. They don't want a handout, they want a hand up. They want to be part of the solution, and they have been part of the solution before the donor community came in. But the mayor also is very humble, and he didn't talk a little bit about his personal experiences. The fact of the matter is, one of the first things that the Russians do when they enter in these communities is they hunt down the local authorities, the mayor. They went to his house. They destroyed his house. They burned his house. They used rocket-propelled grenades to destroy his house, and they left in his front door a flak jacket. When you see these things, it's just hard to imagine. He's a true hero. He's a visionary. People in Bucha hit him in different places every day during the occupation. Ultimately, he ended up just next door as the Russians left. But Mayor, I have a couple of quick questions, and I'll just add them, kind of put them all in together. One, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the Russian atrocities and your personal experiences. We have a full-fledged trip here. This is our first day. We're very thankful for the Wilson Center to open up our first day in such a way. But I'd like to know what you hope to accomplish with your trip here to the United States. And then finally, what can the donor community, what can the think tank community, the governments, not just here in the United States, but in Europe, what is it we can do more to help you? And what is it, finally, that Americans need to know in terms of why this war matters in their backyard? Mr. Mayor.
Дякую за запитання.
Thank you for the question.
Я не випадково відгукнувся на пропозицію пана Брока і зробив робочий візит, офіційну подорож до країни свободи, до країни гаранта безпеки, до народу Сполучених Штатів Америки, які в самий відповідальний момент для мого народу надали і надають руку допомоги, як і інші держави демократичного світу.
Thank you for the questions. So, first of all, I'm happy to join the invitation and have this business trip to the country of liberty, country of freedom and people of freedom, and for that help that the Americans are providing to my country and the hand that they are giving to us.
Важливо, щоб кожен громадянин Сполучених Штатів Америки усвідомив і зрозумів, що, на щастя, війна цивілізацій не йде на американському континенті. На горе для мого народу, але ми героїчно вистоїмо і спільно переможемо. Вона відбувається на території моєї держави, на території України, на сході Європи.
And what I think is important to realize for every American citizen is that this war, luckily for all of you, of course, is not happening on the territory of America, but sadly, it is happening on the territory of my country, which is, of course, we are standing and holding strong and standing strong by defending our land, but this is very unfortunate, of course, that we are having this.
На превеликий жаль, за цінність людського життя, за демократичні цінності, якщо хочете, і за свободу, потрібно постійно боротися, потрібно виборювати це право до того часу, допоки є світло, темрява. Постійно оця боротьба буде тривати. Ми фактично з вами маємо можливість перемогти в цій війні і, повторююсь, на десятки років згарантувати ті правила, по яких має жити цивілізований світ і дотримуватися їх, а не переписувати в історію в пиху своїх політичних імперських амбіцій, як то робить пан Путін.
Unfortunately, the value of life, the value of democracy, and if you want even freedom, we have to fight for it. We have to defend it, and this is the light against the darkness. Luckily, we of course do have a chance to win, and to have a peace for next tens and tens of years. And that this will not be interrupted by the imperial ambitions of some certain presidents, such as Putin in this case.
І друга річ, місія, яку ставлю перед собою, це звернутися до американського народу, до бізнесу, до міжнародних інституцій, аби інвестували, не безоплатно передавали, як і ми жебраками виглядаємо, а інвестували в Україну, інвестували в свою безпеку, інвестували в нашу спільну з вами перемогу.
My second mission is to address to American people, to American businesses and organizations to invest in Ukraine. And I'm not without any returns, of course, we're not the beggars, but to invest in our common security, in our common future.
Маю глибоке переконання і в першому, і в другому питанні, якщо Сполучені Штати Америки роблять кроки, цивілізований світ також погодиться з такою позицією, і ми будемо як ніколи єдині.
I'm deeply convinced that if we are following one and two as an Americans, then all of the Europeans are going to follow the example of the Americans.
Дякую.
Thank you.
And maybe the deputy mayor would like to speak a little bit about the trip and what the delegation hopes to accomplish as well.
I'd like to add that it's very difficult to say it in this building because in my country, can you imagine that you are sitting in the same building, like in the same we have think tanks, but the light is disappearing because of the missile shelling, or you have to keep your kids and go to the basement to protect them from the shelling. You have no internet connection, mobile connection, no electricity, no gas for hours, no water. You can't go to the shower. Because Putin decided that Ukraine does not exist. Because Putin decided that Ukraine is his own country and he wants to see Ukraine without Ukrainians. That's his real aim. Could you imagine something like that in civilized world? So I think that's, for us, it's a big privilege to talk to you and to be in the United States, in the country which gave the Declaration of Independence. We were yesterday in Thomas Jefferson House and we saw that document, and we are sure that Americans, that's the people, the nation, which could help us to enforce to punish Putin. That's why we are here. That's why we want us we want all together to work on a plan how to do it faster. Because every day our soldiers, the most well-educated people, young people, like IT specialists, scientists, think tank leaders, they are soldiers, they are fighting on front line. Russians are killing them. So we are lost in the lives of the most outstanding people of our nation. So please think about that. And we understand that the United States have the most loud voice in the world. And if you are supporting Ukraine in long-term perspective, we will win faster. And that's the aim of our visit.
Thank you. It's been incredibly impressive to see the resolve and the focus of the people of Ukraine. People ask me, why are you doing this? And I just, when you get to Ukraine, you start talking, no matter where you are in Ukraine, the absolute dedication to freedom, democracy, and liberty is palpable. You don't only hear it, you feel it with the Ukrainians. And it's been a privilege to work in Ukraine to help them during this time. But Russia has no rules. They are destroying everything in sight. I visited a small town in Mushan, it's right outside of Bucha, where they didn't just destroy military targets, they destroyed every house. They shut up every church, every school, every administrative building. It looked like a scene out of World War I, frankly. I mean, everything was gone. Burnt trees, and when you go out to the front lines, it's the same thing. It's a tragic and criminal approach to war, and they need to be found accountable. And again, I want to thank the mayor and the deputy mayor for their support, but I also want to, if we have time, to take a few questions.
My name is Peter Sumar. I run a news agency with a specialized CI Ukraine, Capital Intelligence Ukraine, and I've been following Ukraine forever. One of the things I'm missing is direct private sector investment. You have the Development Finance Corporation, you're going there. You have the Export-Import Bank in Washington, D.C. You have the World Bank International Finance Corporation, and the EBRD that can provide capital, political risk insurance. What are you doing to get the people to directly invest, those who are invested to reinvest and rebuild and get new investors to create the real jobs that you need in the future? Because without real jobs and reconstruction, it's very hard to get a city working or in a country working.
Я дійсно дякую за запитання і підтверджую факт допомоги перерахованих і інших міжнародних інституцій, які допомагають збалансувати фінансову ситуацію в Україні, виходячи з того, що йде війна. Ми усвідомлюємо з вами, що в період військових дій, військової агресії, приватний інвестор, бізнес два рази подумає, чи інвестувати. Але, пані Аліно.
Thank you for the question. Of course, I have to balance and say that we do receive the international support from our partners, and obviously we do realize that a private business, private sector, they have to think twice while if they would like to invest while the country is in state war state.
Але навіть в таких умовах 45-мільйонній нації потрібно жити і виживати, і без інвестування, без підтримки, без фінансових вливань робити це досить складно. Через що я, як міський голова, лідер асоціації регіонального відділення нашої Київської області, можу говорити, після успішно проведеної реформи місцевого самоврядування ми створили належні правила гри, умови для інвестування, через що саме період, саме час робити інвестиції, закладати фундамент майбутніх інвестицій після великої перемоги, а вона обов'язково буде.
But even though even the country is at state war, 45 millions have live and survive, and myself as a mayor and as the head of Kyiv regional branch of Association of Ukrainian Cities, I must say that we have created all of the all of the conditions and the rules for the game in order for the businesses to in order for investments to enter our country, and I think this is exactly the time to do so, and not wait for the great victory which is actually coming very soon.
Якби я в двох словах міг пояснити, як працює сьогодні бізнес по 2-3 години вимкнення електроенергії, не відключення, а вимкнення на добу електроенергії на дизель-генераторах, в тому числі, які ми отримуємо як допомогу через різні благодійні фонди, активність проявляємо.
And if I can tell you in 2 words how our business is surviving, having the electricity 2-3 hours per day, and with the help of diesel generators, which we are also receiving from international partners, we are still striving, we are still surviving.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Let me just finally say that it's a privilege to have you here, to be here in the Wilson Center with you and the Deputy Mayor. I will just end with this. Look, I think there's an opportunity for the donor community to help private sector as well. We should be looking internally to Ukraine. We're buying our tourniquets in Ukraine. We're getting our ambulances in Ukraine. Let's help them while we're helping them, meaning let's help that private sector get rebuilt while we're actually rebuilding Ukraine. I want to thank everyone for coming today. It's been a privilege to be here. Again, thank you to the Ambassador Green, and I see my good friend from Ambassador Sullivan who's here today, and I'm glad that you all came out. We'll be here for a few questions after the panel as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all need to give me 1 minute, okay? I'm just going to wrap this up, and you'll see why at the very end, okay? First, on behalf of the Wilson Center, all of us here, I want to thank the mayor and the deputy mayor, Brock, and the interpreter for coming to the Wilson Center today so that you can share these experiences with us of these truly horrific events. And I know it cannot have been easy to relive this with us. What happened to you and to your community has been brought to us here through your words. Russian forces thought they were unseen and unaccountable. Courageous citizens showed their actions to the world. You have told their story to the world, and courageous citizens will hold Russian forces accountable. How we, as the international community, respond to these atrocities will define us. We stand here in this room in safety. Ukrainians do not. Ukraine is fighting to define its future, a European future. Having heard the mayor's words today, we can see why supporting that future is our common challenge. And it is a challenge we must all answer. Now, this is the part where I have a request. Could I ask you all to remain in your seats for a minute or two while we facilitate the departure of the mayor and the deputy mayor from the stage? I know many of you would like to show your support. I know you'd like to stand and have a word and have a handshake and so forth, but I'm going to ask you to have a little discipline and remain in your seats so that we can facilitate his movement from the stage. We want him to get to his next appointment on time so that more people have an opportunity to hear his testimony. So instead, let's show our support by another round of applause. Yes.